In 2014, I had to make a difficult decision to put my mother into the probate court system. But let me tell you why I did this. My relationship with my mother has always been very strenuous. I was certain it was because of the huge age gap. By the time I became a teenager, it got worse, and I ran away from home at age 17, 3 months shy of my 18th birthday. Years later, after I reconnected with my mother, after having 2 little boys, I was dropping them off sometimes when I needed her help. One time, I came to pick up the boys, and my youngest son was extremely excited and pointed at a house floor plan in an all too familiar floor plan book. He was excited to share with me about his grandmother's plans to build a house in a foreign country for everyone to live in. It was the very moment when I had to say to my son privately, "Grandmother isn't lying to you on purpose," that I realized my mother has had a mental illness my entire life. My suspicions were solidified when my adoptive father's widow reached out to me to tell me the reason why my father left was because of my mother's mental illness. My mother is very old school and has always told me to stay out of her business. Even her age was a top secret, like forever. Whenever she had money troubles, I did the best I can to help her the only way I could. I helped her get the utilities assistance in the energy department, provided a new water heater and refrigerator. I also helped her sign up to get food at Bread for the City, and I arranged Seabury to start delivering foods to her house. She grew very fond of Xavier, and I made up a lie that Xavier's therapist wanted to meet her. It was actually a doctor's appointment, and after she found out my lie, she still agreed to meet the psychologist. I had to work the next day and couldn't help her go see him, but she actually really liked him and started seeing him regularly. One time, we had a session together. She finally got a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. I finally got peace in knowing it wasn't my fault. I wasn't the bad, rebellious teenager. I wasn't the bad guy. I was working with so many of the Unity health workers stationed at DC General at the time. We also attempted to get Social Security for her. And because my mother changed her name unofficially and always looked good for her age, somehow knocked 10 years off her age. So this means it wasn't going to be easy to get Social Security for my mother. But luckily, her brother and her sister could vouch for her birth and acquire her birth certificate. Sadly, they both thought a photocopy was all I needed to apply. I will never forget the phone conversation. My aunt telling me she is going to keep it safekeeping and that all I needed to do was use the Social Security number. So because she was the expert of this matter, I was resorted to declare my mother incompetent to get the Social Security she needed to pay the taxes due on the house. My mother had done a reverse mortgage and had overdue property taxes, and it was up for auction. When she finally got all the things she needed, I hoped it would be finally a calm and smooth sailing of finally getting some stability in her life. But that wasn't going to be or stay like that for long. My mother's uncle became her guardian, and the court appointed a conservator. During the following years, there were a few things here and there I didn't like how my uncle handled his guardianship, but it wasn't a big deal. The conservator at least was a nice guy. He seemed to get me and understand me. By 2018 came and things got very hard very quickly. So remember when I said there were a few things that bothered me about my great uncle? Well, first, he clearly didn't understand how to heal the relationship with me and my mother. Once he said, "Let's have family therapy." And that was just my mother ranting and raving at me the whole time while he just sat there and never tried to defend me. So I refused to have any more contact with my mother after that. He took that as I didn't care about my mother, I suppose. I was persistent that he figure out a way to get her medicated. But the laws state she must be aware of what medication she is given and can't be forced unless a danger to herself or others. So I think he assumed the state put together the meal delivery, and when I told him I had to end it because I was called by them that others needed the service more than her because others don't have family or the courts to help them, I believe he was not too pleased with me. during the time she was getting frozen meals. And I was asking him constantly, it would be nice if he got her fresh milk and fruit, but he never did. He was very persistent doing things his way, which was bringing carry-out food. I don't believe they ever eaten together. I only mention that because paranoid people start believing the food they are given is poison. So by the time 2018 came, my uncle started calling me for help. I had always very slowly started seeing my mother more. She was receiving me more warmly, but had grown a distrust towards my uncle. So I started being the middle person. I honestly was getting super frustrated and annoyed by this constant battle with my mother's brain. At the same time, the conservator she had had for 4 years was moving, and she was going to be reassigned a new conservator, a younger guy than me, and proved to be as arrogant as my uncle. So the last argument that inevitably put my mother out of her home was solely based on an idea I had to help my mother's loneliness. So if you have ever had a conversation with my mother, you will notice a pattern. She will either talk about her past or her future plans. Her past consists with either her glory days working at the State Department, her living in Afghanistan, Spain, Morocco, and other faraway places. She will also talk about the trauma she experienced living during the Civil Rights era. As for her future, she was going to get married to a man named Raymond, and we always just missed him, and that he would be coming soon from Libya to live together elsewhere. She always had a mysterious past and secretive motives. So I personally was having a mouse issue, and I knew I was also struggling with depression. So I was playing with the idea of getting a cat or cats. Plus, my boys are going to be finishing school soon, so maybe the empty nest issue would lessen the blow with a few animals. I also thought, since my mother is always stuck in the past and future, maybe a pet would make her mental state to the present. She always talked about all the animals she had in her farm. She talked about goats to chickens as well as cats and dogs. She had pet birds while I was growing up. When I made one mention about a cat in the car with my great uncle, he decided to pull over and continue to repeat himself continuously to me to promise to never bring a cat to my mother's house. He didn't let me bring a word in about my reasoning or things that could help provide care, like self-cleaning litter box or food dispenser. I get it if he believes it is a bad idea, but I wish he could have tried to hear me out. But I have come to realize of his former cop days. He will always be right, and I will always be wrong. There is no reasoning with a man that thinks he is in charge and has to stay in charge of everything. He never stopped yelling at me at that car. I had also spent time with my mother the day before, and so my emotions was very fragile, and he wasn't making any better. So I ended up stepping out the car. After that, I became the most irrational person that left out of a moving car in his eyes. So that summer, my mother shut my uncle out, and because of this, he decided to put her in the hospital. I was never notified of this from him or the conservator. Come to find out from another probate lawyer, they believe if it isn't in their job description to notify family that they put someone in the hospital, it is the family's duty to continue to annoy these guardians, conservators about the whereabouts of their loved ones. So that happened to me. The uncle, from then on, made every decision without me and made sure I never have a chance to talk to a doctor. My mother ended up having her entire life trashed. She arrived at a Maryland assisted living facility with only a hospital gown. She continues to not have a dedicated psychiatrist. She has no pictures of her family. Not that I haven't tried, but her pictures keep disappearing. This is fine for Maryland Adult Protective Services. This is fine for DC Superior Court. This is fine for most everybody I speak with because they are old and mentally ill. They can't tell what they really want because their opinions change depending on the day. But for some reason, mental health specialists and casework are nowhere to be found for this vulnerable population. I am like, everyone has a mom. And everyone would want to have access to their mother. Everyone would want to know what is happening to her. Where is she if she moves? What will happen to her if she goes into a nursing home? Know when she's finally getting medicated. Know if there is a plan when she needs more care. None of these things I can have because I am being punished for being her only child and just a person of interest. This means nothing. I can still not receive every document or be given every piece of information if they choose not to give it, all in her best interest. I have only been holding these men accountable and just want to be treated with respect. Same for my mother. But just as she has been brushed aside, I have been actively silenced by everyone because it isn't that serious to them. Because if the tables were turned, I am sure you would want to be shut out from your own mother or have your entire childhood trashed in an instant. I have changed into an angrier, bitter person every day. And I can't stop. If I share too much, I grow into a deep depression. And if I stop thinking about it, I'm afraid I will become so numb and not have any emotions to care about anything. This is my mom. Why must I be punished to have a mentally ill mother? Why must I be punished because her family is ashamed of me and her? Power needs to always be checked, and sadly in this case, because this population has no voice, they will never be treated as they deserve.